Sorry. Shouldn't say
It's okay.
Should I go out?
We'll just completely start over.
Yes, we need a better entrance.
If I tried to do that in heels, I would be on my tickets on the floor. Points to Gail. So, welcome. Happy St. Patrick's Day. So, we are delighted to officially launch the tour for Prudence, which is the first book in the Custard Protocol by Gail Carriger, who has written the Parasol Protectorate and the lovely Young Adult Finishing School Espionage series. And this is her first adult hardcover, and it takes the concept of soulless and the offspring of the main character in that series and ratchets things up a step and gives a whole different ability to a young lady who can not only remove the supernatural abilities of the people slash sentient beings slash creatures she interacts with, but also take them upon herself for a certain amount of time, which may or may not allow her to return to a safe environment completely closed. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, Gail Carriger and Prudence.
I do feel a little bit like I'm sort of trapped behind two ladybug halves or something. So, show of hands, how many of you have seen me do one of these things before? Oh, good. It's still not all of you, so I still have to do the rigmarole, which is this. Because you have made the brilliant effort to come and see me. Thank you so much. And Mysterious Galaxy is hosting me. Yay, Mysterious Galaxy! I'll answer any question you ask me as honestly as I legally can. Sometimes I'll say, it's a spoiler, ask me later in the line, and I'll whisper the answer to you. And sometimes I'll say, please, please, please don't link this onto social media. And if you do, I didn't say anything. Nothing. As I'm well aware that my secrets are probably not safe with you. Spies the lot of you. I'm also like a movement person, so at some point I'll probably get tired of being behind and going to the front, but we'll see. Yeah, so I don't read. I have terrible British accent. My mother is the Brit in the family, and I can only do a like pseudo imitation of her, which just sounds ridiculous. So I don't read, and I figure you guys can read, probably. So I'll just leave you to it. Instead, I just like to do Q&As, and so I'm hoping you guys all have lots of questions for me, and somebody wants to start. So,
yes.
Woohoo!
Octopus.
The octopus.
What is it a symbol of? Why
Why the octopus?
I like them looking 8-footed, and they're 6-footed.
So. So the octopus is partly the symbol of my group of friends when we were kids in high school. One year we went down to UC Santa Cruz to hang out at the boardwalk, and my best friend in the whole wide world bought me a squeaky rubber octopus, and I named it Wilberforce Percival Mummy III, as you do. And Wilberforce kind of became our totem animal for my group and would come to me to finals and stuff, much to the distress of my teachers and the delight of everybody else. And he sort of represents my particular group, which seems to be many-armed and prone to hugging and dragging new people into the fold in a kind of amoeba-like manner. So it has only grown and expanded. And then I also then went on in life to discover how fabulous the octopus is, this crazy, intelligent creature that's just tool-using and amazing and quite delicious.
Don't tell the octopus.
Yeah.
So I love your fashion sense and
Yo.
your blog and your books in person. So I was wondering what era you're most comfortable in for everyday living, and how that might reflect itself in your wardrobe and your high places and your home.
Well, I'm I'm really chameleon-like. I like to wear lots of different stuff. So I went through a goth phase, but I'm like way too cheerful. It didn't, like, there is the pink side of goth, like there is the other side of goth, but I never quite made it there. And so steampunk is very exciting to me as well, because it's like it's goth with color. But given my particular set of assets, vintage is really the only dresses I wear. So I do have this full collection of vintage dresses, and but I think now, you know, I'm getting up there. I've kind of settled into a sort of gothy rockabilly kind of thing. So
besides, Worth got too expensive.
Yeah. So yeah, and who knows if that will last.
As for 100 years.
I mean, for me. Yeah.
When you were first working on Prudence, I remember you posted in your blog you had to drop it because you got confused switching between the time periods. And then I noticed, looking at your blog recently, that you're going to have another finishing school book come out in November. So how did you juggle the two? Or did you finish those two and then just publish them in a way?
I finished Manners before this. Yeah, it's just the way the publishing world works. So what she's asking about is the fact that Prudence was supposed to come out about, I don't know, year and a half, 2 years ago, something like that. Sorry. I had this big, crazy thing happen. So I'm a scientist by training, and I write kind of strangely scientifically. I'm very organized and disciplined. And I thought I would be fine doing 2 series. I thought I'll just write one for 6 months, and then I'll just switch gears and write the other one for 6 months. So I'll do the YA, and then I'll just move to the new adult series. And it turns out that my creative brain was like, no, you can't do that. Turns out, not one of those authors who can write 2 series at once, and I am amazed and impressed by my author friends who can. But it seems, have to kind of just inhabit one character mostly, and just live and breathe her world. And so I had to go off to my publisher and say, you know, that book you wanted in 6 months? Here it is, but it's really not very good. Unfortunately for me, my editor told me it wasn't very good, and said, you need to do a rewrite, and I said, I agree. I need a year and a half. And so what I did was I tailored that year and a half down, and I basically just self-deadlined the YA series much faster. So I wrote both the final 3 young adult books back to back, and turned the last one in about a year ahead of deadline, which made them very happy with me. But then I was like, you still have to turn it around and get it back to me, because I need it edited and off my plate. And then I went back to Prudence, and that was, for me, that was exactly the right thing to do, because Sophronia was just like, she was out of my brain. Alexia was way in the past at that juncture, and I had exactly what I had hoped to have happen, which is I had this epiphany about Prudence's character, and she just started talking to me, and I was like, oh, there she is. And it just that I couldn't find her beforehand. And she was just muddled. Like, she was just a little bit of Alexia and a little bit of Sophronia, and that wasn't right for her. Like, when the character's not speaking the right way, I know I sound terribly schizophrenic or multiple personality or something, but when the character is not, like, speaking to you, nothing goes right. The dialogue's not working. Like, she's not getting into trouble the way I wanted her to get into trouble. And she wasn't reacting. Like, she'd react sort of secretively like Sophronia, or she'd react very practically like Alexia, and that wasn't working for her. And then I was like, oh, that's because this is her. Like, she's the excitable one. She's she's reacting to 3 very domineering parents by pushing the boundaries and getting into trouble. And I basically tapped in to the part of me that was going to college for because, you know, all your characters are a bit of yourself. And Alexia's kind of a little me and a little of my mom now. And Sophronia's very much how I was in high school. And then Prudence is college. I was like, of course. So she's dealing with everything we deal with when we go away to university, the separation from your parents, the forging yourself a true identity and a purpose in the world and all those things. And then she's also the me who cannot believe how excited she is about this new food she's discovered to eat. Yeah.
So I wanted to ask a question about timelines, because if I've got this right, the Alexia books are in the middle. The Sophronia books take place before Alexia, and of course Prudence has to take place after, given the whole project. Did you plan that out, and was it strange going back and forward in time as you went from series to series?
Well, okay, so the great secret with the Alexia books is that I chose the 1870s because of the clothing. The 1880s are my absolute favorite, but the 1870s are just so ridiculous because the Victorians, opened up all the trade routes by that time, and they just had access to insane colors and clothing and layers and hats, and it was just completely outrageous and a lot of fun to cosplay. So, and the other reason I set in the 1870s is because it's the Little War time period for the Victorian era, which is there's no major wars going on. So Queen Victoria has a lot of tiny actions going on in Africa and India and places like that, but nothing really major. And I didn't really want to deal with a massive historical situation. I wanted Alexia to kind of muck about with history in a very minor way. So then I was like, okay, what I'm passionate about and interested in as an intellectual is technological innovation. And in my particular case, it's I'm interested in voluntary abandonment of a technology, which we see throughout human history, which is when a culture moves away from something that in retrospect or with our modern perspective we would look at and say, why would you abandon that? The best example is the British island giving up the wheel, the pottery wheel, when the Romans left. So I wanted to explore what that would be like in a Victorian steampunk setting. I wanted to focus in a little bit more on the technology, and I wanted it to happen before Alexia. So that as my readers were reading this series that was in the past, they hopefully were noticing a technology that doesn't appear in the Alexia books, and hopefully would start asking themselves why that's the case. And so Sophronia's story is also the story of the mechanicals and the mechanicals and why they're no more by the Alexia books. So that was why it was a prequel. I also always had this idea of doing the finishing school and the spy thing, and I just kind of bundled them all together. And then obviously, one of the other great secrets is that when I wrote Solus was intended to be a standalone, always, because I always had Prudence in mind. I didn't know what her name was or anything, but I knew I had the idea of a metanatural in mind. And so it was always meant to be the story of her parents getting together, and Prudence was going to be the actual story. And I picked specifically the 1850s, the early 1850s for Sophronia because, again, ridiculous clothing. That's the big skirts, but the crinoline hasn't quite come in yet. So it's just layers and layers of petticoats, and that's great for spying because you can hide things, and in Sophronia's case, constantly use your petticoat. Distraction, and yet another one bites the dust. And then the 1890s, which is this one, it has these epically ridiculous sleeves, and it is frankly the ugliest of the time periods. The cover makes her look a little sexier than the actual attire, which is just insane. So that's the secret's the fashion, frankly. Yeah.
I'm kind of curious because I've seen interviews with you where you talk about your archaeological training, and so how do you balance that kind of academic type writing? I mean, do you think that influences your creative writing, or how do you balance them?
Well, I'm not an archaeologist anymore. I know. I am, but then again, I'm a full-time writer, so not a lot of us get to say that. Thank you guys very much for a career. But it certainly comes into play with me. I have really good research skills, at least initially. When I hit the ground running, I had this incredible respect for deadlines. I mean, things changed. But you guys you got one Parasol Protectorate book every 6 months, which is like crazy quick for most authors. And then I realized the more you make your deadlines, the closer the deadlines get, and the more the publishing house takes advantage of you. And I was like, I'm not sure about this relationship. So yeah, the research skill really helped, and you'll see me sneak a lot of archaeology into my books. Alexia and Sophronia to a certain extent, but Alexia definitely, all the sites she travels to are sites that I excavated, and Prudence is going to be very, very similar. So she's going to end up in places that I've visited, partly because I like writing about parts of the world that I'm familiar with, because I feel like you get the smell and the taste and the light of the location better if you've actually been there. Although I have to try and be there in the 1890s. In the middle and then at the back.
I'm super excited it's 1890s. I'm a historian, and one of the time periods I work in is the 1890s.
So you'll find all my mistakes.
Primarily the World's Fair from Chicago, so it's kind of interesting because that's where all the technological advancements really, hit the ground running.
All right, so when Prudence comes over to the New World, we'll have a conversation about beta reading. Yeah, this one I did have India betaed by a PhD at the 1890s in Bombay. So I was like, please. And whoa! That's oddly
Oh my God, they're
common to my book. Watch out, soon the food will be being.
The Falling Dead.
I got distracted by fashion. What were we talking about?
Beta readers.
Beta reader for India.
India, PhD, historical accuracy. Yeah, I think I got it, right? It's all good.
Is Prudence going to come to the colonies?
The New World? I haven't decided. Like, people are very interested in my darker America, but it's darker because they haven't got anything figured out yet. Because the supernatural's not integrated. So I would like to, but right now that story hasn't happened yet. So we have Egypt next. We're going back to Egypt for various reasons in Imprudence, hence the cover art, which some of you have seen leaked out. And then I think Peru, but we'll see. I'm out of contract, so.
You can't see the future, right?
I can't see the future. Yes, we had one at the back.
That was actually my question. Were we going to see Prudence in Peru?
I gotta go to see those fish tacos. I gotta deal with them. Like, I've been waiting for ages. The fish tacos, for anybody who doesn't realize, aside from being the best and most ridiculous name in the universe, are fat-sucking vampires in the Peruvian highlands.
That's supernatural.
which is comedy gold, if you ask me. So Prudence is a little on the chubby side, despite the cover. So I think she's gonna find the Photoshop. 1890s Photoshop. Other question? I will gesture at you with my rose. Yes.
So you have a lot of really great representation in your books, and that's fantastic, and I really appreciate that. But Genevieve, is she transgender, or does she just like to wear boys' clothes? I'm cool either way. Rock on.
Somebody came up to me and asked, or someone, not in person, but I think it was an email or something, which one was the top with Lord Akaldama and Biffy? Just like, first of all, you don't necessarily have to have one be the catcher and one the pitcher. But so occasionally, what is that Grosse Pointe Bank? Like, sometimes I don't inquire too heavily into my characters' private lives. I know I can get a little graphic. But usually they've invited me in for voyeuristic purposes. You know what? I don't know.
Okay.
You would have to ask her. I think in the time period it would be incredibly difficult to actually. I mean, for one thing, if she wanted, there would be no surgical procedures. I suppose she could invent them.
She can do it. She's Madame LeFou. She can do it.
But I think she just is what she is, and if that's, I hope that's not a cop out. But I am thinking about writing some more for her. So those of you who are asking, one of the reasons I'm going to take a little time after the second Custard Protocol book is to write some of the shorts on side characters that have been bothering the back of my head for a while.
Yay! Hedgehog?
There might be a hedgehog. There might be a reunion. Lyle's coming home, so yeah. You all knew he would. It's me. I'm always gonna give you your happy ending. Don't ever doubt it. Yes, did you have a question, or are you just waving a...
Well, a little bit of both. Like I said, I know you're from the more NorCal area, so
I know,
you
sorry.
obviously have a lot of more fabulous friends. who or which group did you base Lord Dackledama on? Come on.
So...
Was it your fair family?
Was it the fair folk? No, actually. In fact, my mother's best friend is convinced that Lord Dackledama is based on him. It's possible. Christopher, who's a landscape architect but wears white from head to toe. Yeah,
Well,
it's possible. But
starts the day in white. Yes.
My dad is a beat poet, and so I grew up in and around all the beat poets of the Northern California area, which means that he likes to say he was the token straight before you could have a token straight. He had a lot of aunties and spent a lot of time in San Francisco at City Lights and that kind of a thing. And so I think Lord Dackledama was kind of amalgam of all of that.
No one in particular, though.
No one in particular. I tend to, like, there's certainly, my friends show up but most of the time the characters are elements of them mixed together.
Because he reminds me a lot of my favorite gay auntie who was a milliner.
See? Yes.
Too.
There are people who accuse him of being stereotypical, and I'm kind of like, well, San Francisco childhood. Sorry. Other questions? Yes, and then yes.
For a while, and I have to admit I've been bad about following your blog, so if you've been doing it recently, I don't know. But for a while, Lord Dackledama had a advice column.
He did, yes. He paused for a while, and I gathered up a bunch of questions, and then he's been hijacking recently, actually. There have been 2 or 3 in the last couple of months, which...
Oh, then I'll go back and find them.
Yes. Yeah, you can just word search Dear Lord Dackledama, all one word, and they'll all pop up for you. Yeah, someday I'm gonna collect them all and check them up for ebook on Kindle, and you can just read them all there. But for right now, yeah, he still hijacks the blog because that's what he does. Yes.
Yes. I remember when I met you a year ago, you had mentioned that you were touching on in a great historical way, since this is the 1890s, the eventual obsolescence of the Victorian world.
Yes.
So how much, now that it's actually becoming more concrete, how much more of the historical obsolescence are we going to see combined with your technological innovations as well as the integrations of the supernatural at the present time?
Well, the Prudence is so this is the first one, so it's kind of a build up. So you kind of have to see, as a writer, I want to show everybody what the Empire looks like before I start to destroy it. It's only fair. So I'm using this one, and you get to see in Prudence, you get to see how steampunk technology is different in a different part of the Empire. And you also get to see, at least I hope, a little bit of the nibbles of what causes it to crumble. So Prudence is a child of her mother, so she's snobbish and imperialistic. But she's also Lord Dackledama's child, so she's good at winkling out information and seeing more. Alexia is very one note in that she sees what she wants to see, or she changes the world to accommodate her. Prudence is better and has a different perspective on the way human beings and supernaturals interact with one another. And so she also can have a first-hand experience of that, because she can literally be another supernatural creature. And so that allows me to have her travel to other parts of the world and actually experience what it's like to be a native, to a certain extent. Mm-hmm. And so through the course of this series, you're going to see her understand the consequences of imperialism in a way that her mother never could. Possibly might put them into conflict, but it's me. It'll all be all right in the end.